Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first bonus training in the live launch workshop. My name is Stephanie Euler. I am the marketing manager here at Kelly Roach Coaching. So you guys are training with me today, which is super exciting. And then obviously you will be with Kelly during the live launch as well. So give me one sec. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, perfect. And let's go up all the way to the top so we can knock this thing out. All right, so if somebody can put in the chat, just let me know here if you can see my screen. Couple things for you guys to know as well. Cynthia on our team is also in the chat with you right now, so she'll be able to kind of comment back and forth with you. She'll also text me and just double check that we've got audio and all of that good stuff. So once again, because I see people are joining right now, welcome, welcome, and welcome. We are on a bonus training today for the September 9th live launch workshop. And we're here to talk about social selling in 2019 and beyond. My name is Stephanie Euler. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here. My role really encompasses all things content and sales and marketing and funnels and social media and all of that really fun stuff. So that is why you're training with me here today. A couple of things that I want you to know. I'm not artistic at all, so you can see the extent of my design skills here on this homepage. My goal for our training today is that you guys really get a blueprint to win with when it comes to social selling. So I'm going to say a couple times throughout this presentation, like if you're on your laptop and want to take a picture of the screen, or you're on your phone and you want to screenshot, there's a couple slides throughout that I'll be like, hey, take a picture of this now because I want you guys to have this. We're also recording this. So if you kind of go through anything, you want to hear it again, just know we will get that out to you in the next 24 hours or so. So let's do a little definition elementary school here, because I think social selling is still fairly new, that everybody kind of knows what it is, but not really at the same time, right? So social selling is just the ability to attract qualified leads on social media. And there's two parts to that, right? There's content and there's conversation. And all roads lead back to two of those. And then obviously your goal is to close them, because I want you to be able to close high-level one-to-one clients. I want you to sell out your group programs, right? I want you to introduce your course to the world with a bang. It all comes back to content and conversation. So let's break down kind of each side of the coin here, and just know we're going to dive into both of these extensively today. The thing with content is this whole idea of the download in a day. And if you're kind of new to us, you may not have heard Kelly talk about this yet. It's still a fairly new thing that we're starting to teach. But it's this whole idea of people kind of binging on content in this kind of short window, right? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about getting consumer commitment. So if any of my unstoppable entrepreneurs are on this call, they recognize this from our coaching call today. And we're also going to talk about letting your content do the heavy lifting for you, because I think that that's really important as you're building out your marketing strategy. The other side of that is the conversation, right? So your ability to both qualify leads and build rapport with people online so that you can deliver solutions for them, AKA your free stuff and your paid stuff. And also so you can cultivate engagement, which I know is kind of the big thing everybody wants online right now. But also most importantly, leads, referrals, and sales. So those again are your two sides of the coin. This is the question everybody asks, so I always like to address this right away, because I think when we say conversation, people get really scared. And they're like, do I need to spend all day in my Instagram DMs? Because that scares me, number one, but the Instagram inbox is scary, number two, right? And the answer to that is no. And obviously we're going to talk about why throughout this entire conversation, but I want to give kind of a mindset shift here that both I've had to go through, I've had to coach people through, I've talked to people about in the tribe of Unstoppables. Social selling, yes, there's an element where you are doing one-to-one outreach. It does not need to eat up your whole day when you excel with it. And again, when we talk about conversation plus content, your content can take a lot of the heavy lifting off of you, right? But to the conversation point, there's kind of this idea of scalable intimacy. And this is we always say there's Kelly Roachisms. You guys will learn this in the upcoming weeks and throughout the live launch workshop. But in our last team meeting, we were really breaking down what is the future of our company? Where do we want to go? What are our goals and our roles in that, right? And Kelly said something that stuck with me, and it was this. It was scalable intimacy. When I joined this company in 2015, it was like the age of automation. It was the age of long form sales pages, right? It was all about just like mass everything. And what's really interesting about that, and my perspective on this kind of stays the same today, is like everybody was just trying to build out as many tentacles of their business as they like humanly could, right? And they're just kind of hoping something sticks. And they're like, okay, well, if I reach X amount of people, like a small percent of them will respond. And in theory, that works. But how much time do you actually want to spend like blasting people with links? It doesn't feel good for you. And it certainly doesn't feel good for the person on the other end. And this is why it's so funny when we talk about like LinkedIn or Instagram specifically, people will say to us like, I don't even get on those platforms anymore because it's so spammy. It's so annoying. I hate getting in a random link in my inbox, right? It doesn't feel good for you or them. So when we talk about scalable intimacy, we're talking about cultivating a community that you don't need a gajillion people in there. What you do need is a smaller group of really well-qualified hot leads who are excited about your content. You know, they're gonna buy from you. And I know you're thinking, Stephanie, that sounds so great. Like everybody says that. But again, I can tell you why this is so important and why I included this slide is because to this day, even myself, I get probably 1 to 2 times per week. Like someone will DM me a random YouTube video with just a link and there's no message and there's nothing. And I'm like, did you get hacked? Like, I don't know what's going on. So when we talk about scalable intimacy, it's about you focusing on your audience. It's not about just blasting everything as much as humanly possible and then just hoping a percentage of it sticks, right? We are all about systems. We're also really about working the numbers. You guys will hear Kelly harp on numbers a lot during the live launch workshop. Our old tagline in the company used to be success is scientific, not personal. And I believe that with every fiber of my being, right? Because you have the opportunity to work a real system. So back to my backstory, I'm going to bring you back 4 years ago. So obviously, like I said, my role now is senior marketing manager. But when I started, I was just like a LinkedIn marketer, right? And I was also producing the podcast and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like sharing episodes and chatting with people and hoping for the best. What happened was I kind of had accidentally closed a client and was like, ooh, this could be something. Like, let's figure this out. And again, I work for Kelly Roach. So everything comes back to the numbers. So what happened was we ended up kind of building out the system, starting on LinkedIn before social selling was really even a thing. And this is what we then translated to Instagram and then to Facebook and then scaled all of it up, right? So I'm giving you kind of this baseline because I think these numbers are pretty easy to wrap your head around. Also, we're going to go back to the whole idea of like, do I have to be doing this all day? Because I want to show you why that's not the case. Again, it's that mindset shift of focusing on the effectiveness, not just doing the activity to cross it off a list, right? So this is what I had found. When I was working a daily LinkedIn system, I was sending about 100 messages to connections who obviously we work with business owners and CEOs and things like that. So connections who were in that realm. Typically what would happen was I would get about 7% response rate. So like 7 people would respond. I'd engage them in conversation. 2 to 3 of those ended up being good leads, pull them into a consult. The way we teach the consultation module or model, I would love for you guys for every 3 consults that you have to be able to close at least 1 or 2 of them, right? So this was really like the funnel. And I'm like, great, I'm literally just sending a couple messages per day. Like this is working. So then what happened? Kelly came to me and she was like, we got to 3X this. Like, I want to see what we can do. We're building something really important right now. So we're like, okay, well, if we want to 3X the system, let's do it. So what did that look like? 300 messages out, 21-ish responses, 9-ish good leads, pull them into consults, net 3 sales a week. Boom, boom, and boom. And I know this is probably not the most exciting thing that you've ever heard in your entire life, but I'm giving this to you because, again, we rinse and repeat with this system on all of our social media platforms. But here's the thing, like you guys are business owners, which means your time is really limited and it's precious the time that you do have. So if you're going to get into social selling, whether it's LinkedIn or any other platform, like I said, we use this exact same thing across the board. Like you need to know how much time you're putting in because then you need to look at the outcomes and say, okay, is there an effectiveness issue? Is there another issue going on? Finding the breakdown in your sales and marketing is worth its weight in gold, right? So I know everybody asks this, especially if they're brand new. It's like, okay, well, Stephanie, again, that sounds like really great. How the heck do I even get people? Like, I don't even have any people. I'm starting from zero. I switched niches. Now I have people that don't match, whatever it is. Those of you that are clients on the line right now, you know my tagline. If you need people, go get people. And again, I know this is a mindset shift for many. But here's the deal. There's like 7 billion people in the world. Most of us need like 300 maybe, like a pretty good handful. So the odds really are in your favor, no matter who you are and what you do. With 7 billion out there, like, you will be able to find your group. And I think that that's really important. But again, when I coach with our clients and I talk to business owners and we do a breakdown of the outbound activities that are happening, it kind of goes like this. They're like, well, I'm not really generating leads. No one's booking consultations. My sales have kind of been up and down. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, great. Walk me through all of the outbound activity. And it always goes something like this. They're like, okay, so I post to Instagram and then I put it in my stories and I do an IGTV like once a month and I go live in my group. And I'm kind of like listening through the list and I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, do you have like a 30-minute block every day where you're going out and you're literally finding people? If you're not running ads, you need to go find people, right? And there's always kind of a pause because it's like, oh, I guess I have to do that, right? We have been taught for years that social media content is king. It's only about content. If you don't have great content, nothing else matters. But with the way social media has changed over the years, you need people to see it, right? It's no secret that visibility is down, organic reach is down, and that's just the way it is. I know that sounds like tough love, but you know, in our company, for example, that has never bothered us. An algorithm change has never thrown us off because we understand how to go get people, but also how to qualify them, which we're also going to talk about today, which I'm really excited about because that's kind of my bread and butter. So here's the thing. If you need people, go get people. You can see some examples on your screen right now. We have so much social media around us. The way that I like to teach people this process, just to give you kind of the brain work behind it. Number one, go get yourself a core group of people, get them engaging, get them to know you, right? Take every one person you have and turn that into 2 by then going and getting referrals. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but again, I want you to be thinking in terms of a marketing ecosystem so that whenever one person comes in, you have kind of a roadmap already built out for what happens next. So just start by getting people, and it can really be as simple as following people, sending connection requests. If you're running ads, that's another great way. If not, go back to the other social media pieces. And I want to talk a little bit about revenue goals. As I said, when we teach people to work the numbers. There's no throwing spaghetti at the wall, if you will. So I want you to think about right now, and if you don't have all the answers to this, that's totally fine. If you do, amazing. This will be quick math for you. How many clients can you serve? And then what are your monthly revenue and sales goals? And then look at what your price point needs to be to bridge the 2 of them. This is important because when we're putting out content and we're talking to people to qualify them, you want to make sure that the people coming in are a match for you and your price. So we have a lot of people that have these premium packages, which is awesome. You can close all the clients in the world if your lead generation is bringing in the right people. If you're attracting people that are at a different level and it doesn't match up with your pricing and their ability to invest, you will slow your growth. So it's really important to just get clear on what you can do, what it looks like, and what it is, so that you can then reverse engineer the goal. And again, that comes out through your content and that comes out through your conversations. Hopefully this is making sense. So let's go back to our original LinkedIn system here. We said when we scaled up to kind of 3x the system, right? 30 messages out, 21 responses, 9 good leads, 9 consults, net a couple sales from that as well. What I was finding as well is that, again, just working this on LinkedIn for an example, there was typically a 10% acceptance rate on connection requests in the first 2 days after the request, right? And we're going to talk about the timing of that and why that's important when we get into the 6 pillars of qualifying during the conversation piece. So hold that thought if you're like, hold on, so how many people, what do I know, blah, blah, blah. We're getting there for sure. So if you're starting from 0, and this is any social media platform, it would take you about 30 days if you connect with 100 per day to build up to about 300 people. You will hear us talk about the number 300 multiple times. You're seeing it here. You'll also hear why in the live launch workshop, we really resonate with the number 300 and we want you guys to have that. And you'll hear kind of why we're talking about that in terms of conversion rates and things like that. But for another example, connecting with 200 per day, you can get your 300 after about 2 weeks. And the question that always comes up, especially when I frame this up with LinkedIn, people are like, hold on, doesn't LinkedIn limit the number of connections? Do you have to pay for LinkedIn? Like, what is happening? The answer to that is no, you can do it totally organically. Because here's the thing, it's content that attracts that's going to bring people into you. It's going to be people finding you and connecting with you. So what you're doing is you're working the multiple pieces in play at any given time nothing in marketing just stands alone. So again, we're kind of talking about this like 360-degree ecosystem that translates out to every single area of what you're doing. So again, this is in terms of timing. If you are just getting started, you can get this up and running within 30 days. And there's going to be people that you're talking to all along the way. It's not like you do nothing until you reach 300. But what I'm trying to kind of give to you guys is this, not permission, but the opportunity to be like, go out and just start. And that's, I think, a big hindrance for people when they get started in social selling. Those who are new and those who are scaled up and now realizing that they have to bring in the social media piece in order to go further. So again, like you are having a building phase, but there's always things kind of happening and you're always going to be chatting with someone. You're always going to be getting feedback and putting out content. So there's a couple different things at play. So this was kind of the ending timeline. Again, I'm going back to the original question of like, do I have to do this all day? That sounds awful. So what typically happened was about 2 to 3 hours per day to start. And at the time it was 1 hour connecting because I was still building that up. And then about 2 hours messaging. And then as I streamlined that, it became about 2 hours daily. And I would break that into 1 hour here, 1 hour there. If you have a 9 to 5, a lot of our people who come in with side hustles, they do it on their lunch break and then like an hour in the morning. So you can break that up. And then we had 30-minute consultations. For everybody that asks, we typically recommend that your consultations don't go longer than 30 minutes. Obviously, that depends on your niche. But again, I want you to have a numeric system and I want you to have time blocks and I want you to have the system to win with content and conversations so you know exactly what happens. So this was just an average thing, right? So you've got all these consultations, you've got these things going. Maybe you have multiple packages, maybe you have one package. Regardless, one of the big pain points that we see with service-based business owners online is this idea of like a revenue roller coaster where it's like you have an amazing week and then things are like kind of slow for a little bit and then you have a really good week and then it's slow. What I want for you guys is, again, build in the time blocks, understand the outbound activity, and then put it into practice so you can start getting that cycle going every single week, right? Let's talk about the content piece because that's the exciting one. Back to this little download in a day concept. And again, if you've kind of been with us for a while, you may have heard Kelly talk about this. Download in a day is really this idea of how people are operating online today and how they're buying today. And also really looking at what types of content are people consuming on the platform that you're on. So again, we work with service-based business owners to scale online. The ones that are using Instagram in our industry are looking at stories and they're watching IGTV. They're not necessarily looking at feed posts, right? Maybe they're not getting on and the first thing they do is scroll the feed. And that's just, we've asked people time and time again, hey, what do you use on Instagram? And people ask us, how do we know and how do we do our market research to understand this? Some of you that are on this call right now have probably had a call with me in the last maybe 2 weeks where we got on and I was like, do you have 10 minutes? Tell me about the content you consume. Tell me about the people that you follow, right? So all of this is just data points for you. But when we bring it back to the download in a day, you want to be able to have almost this binge period. And maybe this has happened to you. This happened to me the other day. I found a new podcast that I really liked. I think I listened to it for like 2 hours while I was like cooking and cleaning up and all the things. When somebody finds something online that they really like, they look for more of it, right? It's like this addictive feeling of like, oh my gosh, I love this. I want more of it. I'm excited. And then they go and they're like, okay, let me find them on Instagram or let me watch this story. Oh, they have highlights. And they click around. And even if it's for a couple minutes at a time and not a longer thing like my example, what it's doing is solidifying you in their brain. So it's a download in a day. And we get a lot of people, for example, that come to the tribe group. And the reason we started doing the units for organization in the Tribe of Unstoppables was because people were coming in. They're like, how do I find your past videos? I love them. Or people that come in, they're like, I found the podcast. I listened to 10 episodes today. It's the way people operate. We get that feeling. We want more of it, right? And then they buy through people that they trust. We always talk about the know, like, and trust factor. This is not a new concept in marketing, but people buy from the ones that they know, like, and trust. The difference in 2019 and what's going to happen the next year or so as well is, again, that binge. So if you're not set up for the binge and there's no way for them to find you, they kind of pull back and then our internet brain kicks in and we're off to the next cat video or whatever it is, right? So you want to capture the binge. And again, this is really where your content comes into play. So you want to be thinking about, are you set up? Because if you're not, you're going to rely heavily on those DMs and one-to-one contact. which is not a bad thing at all. I can tell you when I started on LinkedIn, for example, and we were late adopters to Instagram, I think we got on in like October 2017, maybe. Like our content wasn't amazing. We were doing some videos, it looked good, but like I was messaging people. So if your content isn't set up for this download in a day, you're going to rely heavily on those DMs. But what happens then is you come back and you're like, okay, but how do I scale this, right? I can hire people, that's great, but I'm online. There's something else that needs to happen here. And so that's where your download in a day comes back. The idea of thought leadership online is a big one. Positioning is a big one as well. People want to go to people that they trust, but it also has to be some level of like, okay, I know this person knows what they're talking about because I feel connected to it and I understand it when they talk about it. So if you've got like multiple IGTV videos, for example, even if they're short and sweet, it shows you having an expertise in an area and being able to kind of coherently put something together that somebody can learn from you. And they're like, oh, okay, so they've got some stuff going on. Like, this is good news, right? It's kind of like when you go to an Instagram profile, if you've ever had this happen, right? Somebody follows you on Instagram, you click to their profile to see who they are, there's like nothing there. The likelihood of you following them back is probably slim to none, because then you just get this feeling of like, I don't know who this is, I don't know what they're about, I have no idea how they found me, like stranger danger. So it's that lack of thought leadership and positioning that's missing when you don't have this download in a day. And I'm giving you a lot of Instagram examples. Just know the next slide has some other examples as well. But I really want you to be thinking about whether or not you're set up for this, right? And of course, because we're talking about your content doing the heavy lifting, when this isn't in play, your nurture process and sales process is going to be a lot longer because it's totally reliant on you. And then of course, you'll lose visibility and followership. This happens every single day. It's just the nature of the internet. There are so many ways to protect yourself against that. And this really is one of the big ones. So here's a couple examples, right? Post multiple stories a couple times a day. It just bumps you kind of to the front of the line in terms of stories. Create units in your Facebook group so you can break things down by topic. We just did this in the tribe group. People come in kind of knowing it's like business growth, but they don't know totally that it's like online marketing, social media, mindset, right? All of these things. Units is one way to let people know exactly what you're about and give them that binge that they're looking for. If you're running Facebook ads, you can run what we call a nurture video. It's like a 2 to 4 minute tip. You run it for video views. You put that in front of your warm audiences. The idea there is that as they're scrolling their feed, they're seeing your face, they're hearing your voice, right? They're seeing your name. It's just that solidifying you in their brains. Putting your podcast at the front and center of your marketing. We just did a free podcast mini series and we were talking to people about like, well, what are you doing with your show? And they're like, I just kind of put it out. I think everybody kind of needs to bring their marketing into like a more concrete system that's circulating through all of your pieces of content so people can binge, right? Versus kind of that one-off thing. We also talked about IGTV. So if you have a couple videos up there, amazing. And then of course, an onboarding conversation flow, which I starred because we're going to come back to that in our conversation piece, but it's definitely part of it as well. So you can see you can shake this out for whatever your social media looks like. But again, if you don't have stuff set up for people to find you, love you, and then binge your stuff to get that solidifying happening, that's where I want you to really direct your attention in terms of content. Again, the binge makes you memorable. This is kind of like your big takeaway that I want you to take from this little part of our training today. So time to audit. And this is something where I really, after our training today, if you have 15 minutes, I would love for you to kind of sit and think about, would you stick to your social media profiles if you just arrived? Would you be interested in what's happening there? I've always found that in marketing, one of the best things to do and one of my favorite things to do when I feel stuck is to ask myself as a consumer, what would I do? And would I be interested in this, right? So this is a big one. And Kelly audits our own profiles all the time. We actually just did this and we were like, what are we doing? Like, we don't have enough video content, blah, blah, blah. We made those changes and we were seeing the results from it in terms of views and engagement and all of those things. So it's like, take a step back, because when you're really close to it, it can be hard, but take that step back and think, would I stick? If I was just coming in and I didn't know anything about me, would I hang out here? Let's talk about getting consumer commitment. I think this is a big factor in online marketing today. You can build a Facebook group, you can put stories up, you can do all of the things. But if you just have people that are viewers versus participants, it's going to be a struggle to get that consumer commitment. Consumer commitment is just getting people to be essentially fans of yours, where they believe in your content, they love you and your mission, they're coming back, they're looking for it, right? And these are the types of people that you see on live streams that are like commenting and they're excited and you're like, I need that. You want to get consumer commitment, right? It's the process of taking people from viewer to participant. So the way you can do that is, number one, when you do a piece of content, content is not just king, it's the distribution that is so excited. So when you put out a live video, for example, so in the Tribe of Unstoppables, we do a training Tuesday, and Kelly gets on, she teaches a sales or marketing thing live. We don't just let that video go. Like, it doesn't just kind of disappear into space, right? The next day we tag people in it. We ask in our DM conversations, hey, were you on Training Tuesday? We allude back to it where we're like, oh, this week on Training Tuesday, we talked about X. Here's something similar. So we're letting people know that that one thing that they're seeing, it's a part of a greater ecosystem. Again, a 360-degree marketing ecosystem. I want you to have calls to action. And this can mean a number of things, right? Not every live video you do, for example, is going to be like, go to my sales page and sign up and work with me today, especially if you're still nurturing your audience. But what we used to do when we were first starting out, we just came out with live streaming. I don't know if it was 2015, maybe somewhere around there. But what we would do is when Kelly would get on live, people were still kind of getting used to what it meant to be a live video viewer. And so we were working on just getting them commenting, because if you can get somebody to start engaging, they will continue. But what we would do is Kelly would say, give me a 1 in the comments if whatever. Give me a 2 in the comments if whatever. And people would put 1, 2. And it's these small asks, these small calls to action that get people to start from viewing to participating. So, have people jump on and just be like, pop a hi in the comments so I know you're here. Drop a 1 if this is you. Give me a yes in the comments if you agree. It's those short, quick sprints of engagement that feels less weird for people. We have a lot of people who, for example, maybe they're in a mindset coaching, or they're in health coaching, or something that feels very personal to people. You might get on a live stream in those industries and you're like, okay, well, these people probably aren't going to lay out their life stories for me here. So engagement can be hard because your health, for example, is so personal. So you want to just take it back up to a high level, right? And so what you want to say is do you feel stressed at work? Give me a yes. Do you feel like your evenings are chaotic before bedtime? Give me a yes. Whatever that is, these are bad examples. But, you ask for these quick little engagement pieces and you get people just used to commenting. My Unstoppables know that I always talk about kind of quote unquote training your people. And I hate to use that phrase. But if you're just getting on your live and you're like, all right, well, no one's engaging, so I'm just going to go with this and, I'll just repurpose it later or whatever it is. You have to kind of lean in and let people know that this is the place to engage. So you start small and then you get bigger. You also want to meet them where they're at. So I was on the calls. Hopefully some of you that are on the line today did some with me. And I was asking people if they said they wanted video content. I'm like, great. Do you like short videos? Is it long videos in terms of podcasts? Less than 10 minutes, over 10 minutes, an hour? What is it? Most people, at least in our niche, and you can survey your niche as well, most people want micro content to start. And micro content is just those short, quick wins, right? Think Instagram stories are 15 seconds or less. Our best performing opt-ins when we run Facebook ads are 5 steps to blank, weekly marketing checklist. People online want these quick wins because we're kind of trained now as social media users to just have those little short, sweet things, right? So most people want micro content to start. So if you have somebody coming into your marketing ecosystem and you're like, here's an hour-long podcast episode that I think you'll love. And they're like, what? That's nice of you, but I don't have 60 minutes to dedicate to you right now. So what you want to think about is, what do people want right now? How can I meet them where they're at? That's why you heard me talk about a 2 to 4 minute tip as a nurture video earlier, and why we were saying most of our market is looking at Instagram stories and IGTV. It's those short things that people want. Once you get consumer commitment with short content, they will show up for your long content. What I can tell you time and time again as well is, in our market, most people are also parents. So we know if we have anything going on around typical dinner time, typical bath time, typical bedtime, right? Here's an hour and a half webinar. It's not going to happen. So you really want to be thinking critically about the content that you're putting out and looking at, is my content from 2015 or is my content optimized for 2019? And then, of course, you want to open the conversation. Again, I had a coaching call about this today, so this is perfect timing. The way to get people committed to your content and engaging in your community get them involved, like get feedback from people. When we talk about this whole idea of participation, you want to lead a group that has content that's driven by the audience. People are going to be more excited when you can literally say to them, what do you need? Hey, you said you need this? It's right here. Most people have asked for this. This was our most asked question this week, right? Open up the conversation, do the polls, DM them one-to-one. When people feel like they have a piece in the puzzle, it's getting that engagement and getting that buy-in. And I hope that that makes sense. So, of course, why consumer commitment beyond the obvious? I will scream this from the mountaintops. No more link blasting. No more. We talked about scalable intimacy. You need quality, not quantity, right? No more link blasting. Doesn't feel good for you. Doesn't feel good for them. Okay, so that's a big one. Number 2, obviously, organic growth. We are going to do a ton of bonus resources for our live launch registrants on Facebook ads and things like that. But a lot of people are asking how to grow organically as well. And so when you have the ability to do this and you have this consumer commitment, this is where it makes it easier for you to, number 1, grow, but also get referrals, right? If you've ever had a Facebook group with people that are like kind of engaged and you're like, I'm going to have everybody in my Facebook group invite somebody in. And you're like, guys, bring your friends in, have them join the party. And then it's like crickets. It's because you don't have that consumer commitment yet. They're not dedicated enough to be like, you know who I actually know this would be perfect for? My friend so-and-so, let me bring them in, right? So the ask for that type of thing gets really easy. The other thing for this is shares. So if you want people to share your content, right? We do this for some of our launches. We'll like create social media graphics and we'll say to people, post this in your stories, you know, and tag us. We'll repost it. We'll give you a shout out, whatever it is. And so it becomes part of the whole nurture process that both gets them going and then, of course, like gets them actually sharing and bringing other people in. When you have that happening, that social proof, that's how things start to go out. But again, when you start with the end in mind and with your consumer in mind and their commitment, you can very easily reverse engineer the goal while you're meeting people where they're at, right? So you want to let your content do the heavy lifting. And this is just kind of one example of one of the legs of our business. So like I said, we run a marketing checklist via Facebook ads. People opt in for that. They're then redirected to our Facebook group. From the Facebook group, they get welcomed and they typically get connected with a member of our team. Most of you guys probably know Cynthia and I. Our push is to really make sure we're getting people on that first training Tuesday. They're kind of like our big impact activities. And then we also want to make sure people are subscribing to the podcast. The whole idea around this like subscribe thing is, yeah, you want people to actually subscribe to your stuff, right? Like subscribe to your podcast, turn on notifications for your videos, turn on post notifications on Facebook. But you want to make sure they're actually subscribing as in like they're bought in and they're excited about it. When you can get them bought in and excited, that's when your content does the heavy lifting and the pressure is taken off of you to do everything one-to-one, right? So again, for us, we look at Training Tuesdays and we look at podcasts because those are kind of like our 2 1-2 punches because we know people in our market are really into video and then they're also really into audio. And most people like to multitask, which I always smile about because I'm the same exact way. So those are kind of the 2 things. Once you get them integrated, you get them into that download of the day. Everything you do is just the icing on the cake, right? And this is really the idea of omnipresence done well. Where people always say, it's like, how do you do and be everywhere on social media? It's so hard. It's just me or my team is small or whatever it is. It's this idea of like an onboarding process, right? The onboarding process allows you to have omnipresence. And you can see an example right there. In just this funnel, they've gotten on our email list. They've gotten on our Facebook group. They've watched Kelly on video. They're now getting us in their earbuds. It's the whole idea of being everywhere. And like our podcast, we schedule, right? We do Training Tuesday once a week. So it takes the pressure off of you. For all my clients that are on, you've heard this a million times, but I'm going to reemphasize it again. The idea is frequency and consistency in all things marketing. And we're going to come to this idea of these 16 impressions closer to the end of this. But the consistency piece is really lacking for most people. So we talked earlier about the example of the person who's doing a ton of posting but not finding people. There's also people that are like, oh yeah, like once a month I do like a binge and I'm like, oh, I get really inspired and I go and I follow people on Instagram and I do all the things, but then nothing happens after that. So again, with this idea of just stepping off that revenue roller coaster, you can do that when you have this built into your marketing system. So for example, I'll actually go back to it. If you don't have our marketing checklist, comment in the comments so that Cynthia can get your names, because I want to make sure we send that to you guys. But the marketing checklist, for example, is one way to make sure every single week that you've got all the things going on in your social media that is going to set you up to bring people in, to attract really great leads, to get the download in a day, to get them engaging, to qualify them, and to close them. So now the second piece of this is the conversation. In the conversation, your goals are to qualify and build rapport. You want to figure out how you're going to deliver your solutions by getting them to give you the blueprint. And then, of course, you want to cultivate engagement, leads, referrals, and sales, all the good stuff, right? Let's talk about the 6 pillars of qualifying. And this is actually one where if you can screenshot this or take a picture of it, again, we're recording this, so no worries if you can't. The 6 pillars of qualifying is like your new guidebook to everything online. Because as we said, there's like 7 billion people in the world. You don't need that many. Yay, the odds are on your side. But with that many people going around, you're going to talk to people that are leads, and you're going to talk to people that maybe aren't leads. And so when you're going through and you're kind of using these conversations to qualify people, you need to know exactly what you're looking for and how to find out that information. So pricing is obviously a big one. We talked about people who have either raised their prices or they have a really great value that's priced at where it should be, but they're not attracting the leads who can afford it, right? That is something that you want to address in your lead gen and qualifying process. Historical buying decisions, have they invested in stuff in the past? Are they the person making the ultimate decision, right? We talked about this one. Do they buy based on value, or are they just looking for the cheapest option humanly possible? Do they need your offer, and can you get in front of them? A note on the proximity thing. This is one of the 6 pillars. I find this one to be the easiest on social media. For Instagram, for example, when we meet people on Instagram, we say, is Instagram the main platform for your business? And if they come back and they say yes, boom, proximity, good. We know we can get in front of them because they're active here. Same thing on LinkedIn. I know not everybody is super excited and active on LinkedIn. So when somebody would connect with us on LinkedIn, one of our first questions was, do you use LinkedIn often? And if they come back and they say yes, boom, cross that off. So proximity is a fairly easy one. Again, if someone's responding to you and they're on that platform, you're good. It's the other ones that I really want you to focus on when it comes to this whole idea of the conversation. So what you're basically doing is you're creating a conversation flow that you kind of always fall back on that allows you to build the relationship while qualifying the person. A couple little things here, remember that you're the initiator of the conversation. So you're in charge of keeping that conversation going, right? When you go up to somebody and you're like, hey, I'm just reaching out, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, great. And so you ask them a question and they answer. In the very beginning, it's this whole idea of like they're still warming up to you. So if you're at a place where you're kind of asking them questions and they're not asking you questions back, it's still on you to keep the conversation going. They're looking to you as the leader, especially if they've just joined your Facebook group, like you are the leader, right? So it's natural for them to kind of look to you to be like, okay, well, what's this happen? What is this thing that's happening? Where is this going? So if you're a person who like you get something back or you get a response back where they're answering you, but either it's a little bit short because it's, again, they don't know you, or they're not asking you a question back, it's still on you to keep going. That's a major breakdown I see when I analyze people's social selling systems is they'll be like, oh, hey, so-and-so, so great to connect. And they're like, yeah, you too. And then nothing happens. And they're like, well, I didn't know how to follow up. Ask a question, right? You're the initiator, so you want to keep it going. During the qualifying process, there are 3 main things that I want you to be working on. Number 1, uncover the urgent need. Number 2, find out what they're doing to address that urgent need already. Figure out how effective it is so far. That will give you the blueprint to position your solution, right? So what's the gap? What's the thing they need? What are they doing right now to work on that? How effective is what they're doing? Boom, we've got the blueprint. 3 steps, easy. As always, you're working on the transition from viewer to participant and then getting that consumer commitment as well. So these are kind of like your 3 golden rules. And then here's the example flow. You can totally take a picture of this as well. We're going to dive into each of these questions a little bit as well. But we use something similar to this. So how'd you get started in your business? How do you work with your clients? What are your goals? What are you doing? Where do you see opportunities, right? You can see our big 3 kind of built in there as well. So this is kind of the example flow. And this is an outline, right? Every conversation is different. When we talk about scalable intimacy, it's about you really reaching out and listening and then turning back around what you're learning into your content and into your follow-up questions with the person. Conversations, content, both working, right? So in between these things, it's not like you ask them, they answer, you ask them, they answer. There's going to be little things in there, right? If you come in on Monday, ask how their weekend was. You know, what I've kind of learned about social selling and the way that I like to tell people to approach it is you have all been communicating with other people since the day you were born and the day you could start talking. So there's things that you know how to do. You know how to be nice and build rapport with someone, right? You meet a friend of a friend, you know how to do the small talk thing and have a conversation. It is the exact same thing. And I think sometimes when we're on our screens, like if we kind of feel like, okay, there's a barrier here, so I don't really know what to do with this. And so I'm just going to be like totally sterile and like awkward, and you don't have to be, right? I'm really happy with the addition of voice memos example for social media. So on Facebook and on Instagram, I think LinkedIn might have it now as well. But there's a way to break down kind of that like internet stranger danger situation by just being yourself. And so when you kind of have that mindset shift and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can just talk to people. This is amazing. That gift to me is just still not lost. Again, 4 years later, like that's not lost on me. That is the best way. Business at the end of the day is making deals with other people, right? And then of course, we talked about this a little bit, but you're going to add your mix-ins to your outline here. So you're going to ask about their weekend, ask what they're working on, all of these little rapport things. You can see my note there. You've been doing all of this for your entire life. And then you can seed in your content until you have consumer commitment. What tends to happen is maybe you follow someone on Instagram and they're like, hey girl, thanks for following. Here's a link to book a consultation. You're like, what? I just got here. What are you talking about? I just liked your Instagram posts, right? What you want to do instead is focus on building rapport, mixing content into the conversation. I'll give you an example. You know, for us on Tuesdays when we're chatting with someone, I mean, our group is based on business growth and online marketing. So a lot of our conversations end up being about that anyway. But like, I will straight up say to people like in conversation, what are you doing tonight? We have training Tuesday. We're talking about, I don't know, growing on Instagram. So there's a very natural and easy way to seed in that content. When your consumer commitment kicks in, they're showing up for your content. So you just kind of have to guide them a little bit in the beginning. Once you get those downloads in a day in, you have that consumer commitment, you're good to go. The other thing that I would really kind of talk about in terms of scalable intimacy is you're really good people, get connected with them on other platforms. You're going to see an example of the 360-degree marketing system on my last slide today, but get connected with them on other platforms so they can see you. Frequency and consistency. They're seeing you a lot and they're seeing you, you know, fairly regularly. Those are your mix-ins. And then of course, the caveat to that is making sure that you are checking out their content and taking a genuine interest in them, right? This is a two-way road. At the end of the day, business is about deals made between two people or two companies or whatever it is. So if it's a one-sided thing and you're like, oh, here's my stuff, here's my stuff, here's my stuff, it doesn't feel good for them. And after a while, you're going to kind of feel like a broken record, right? And it's all that spammy stuff online that like none of us enjoy, but we keep seeing it. There is a better way. There's so much a better way, and there's a much more effective way. So again, I want to bring us back here because our questions that we ask in the DMs help us uncover the points that relate back to the 6 pillars. And of course, you turn that back around into content as well. But let's kind of map them out so you can see the thought process behind all of these. So you saw that the first question was, how do you get started in your business? There's a couple things that this could lead to. And again, this is the question leads to the answer. Sometimes it'll be like a one-to-one thing. Sometimes you'll find stuff out in that sub-conversation. You might want to find out if there's any business partners or anything like that. That would go back to that decision-making pillar where, you know, you have someone really great, you get them on the phone, you have a great consultation, and at the very end, you're like, they're going to buy. And they're like, well, I have to discuss with my business partner. So that's something you want to know going in, because if you're going to do a consultation, you probably want to have it with both of them, right? So how did you get started in your business? Learn the history, what the business is about. Find out how long they've been in business. Again, these things lead to the answers, but these are things you want to think about. So if they've been in business for 10 years, okay, well, things are probably good because 10 years is a long time. That could be a potential indicator of like a revenue level that could translate out to ability to invest. There's a couple things in there. Learn more about what they love. We're talking about building rapport. You should know your leads inside and out, and they should feel like they know you and that they trust you and that they trust that you're leading them in the right direction. So you just have like a pool of people that you know nothing about and you're like, oh, I hope they buy. It doesn't work that way anymore, right? So learn more about what they love, what did they are inspired by in their business, right? Like what's the story that got them in business? The other side of that is learn their mindset. So if you've ever had this happen, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's people out there that invest in themselves in both free and paid things, but the type of person who wants to grow and they want to be better and they want to be their best self. And there's people that just aren't quite there, right? And you want to work with the people that are like, I want to grow. I want to be better. I want what you have. Like, I want to learn from you how to do that. It's a very specific mindset. And that's kind of like the qualitative aspect of qualifying. But you can find out a lot about that mindset when you hear people talk about their business and you hear kind of how they got started and what their mission is. That can be a really good indicator of just understanding that about them. How do you work with your clients? So a couple of things that you might want to learn in here. Again, guys, this is an example from us. So we work with business owners. So what I would say if you're in a different industry is obviously this will be a little bit different. But what I'm trying to give you in this example is an understanding of like the question leads to the answer. So how do we build that bridge, right? So how do you work with your clients? Do they have a group program? How many people are in their group program, right? This could be a potential indicator of a revenue level, ability to invest. In our niche, just being business coaches and consultants, this is a potential indicator of buying based on value versus price. So if somebody has like a premium price, product or service, we're like, amazing, like they're pricing where they need to be. That's a confidence level and that's a self-assuredness that like that to me is a good mindset right there. And that's something that we want to know, right? And then of course, there's a potential opening to talk about your opportunities for growth, what they're doing to address it, our big 3 that we talked about earlier. Do you have any big goals that you're working on right now? So indicator of urgent need, we talked about that. Potential opening, hear them outline. Are they planning on getting support in whatever, right? For us, it's like people either have invested in coaches and they get it. They'll never invest in a coach, which is fine, to each his own. There's people that are open to it, but have never done it. So you can kind of hear like what types of support they're doing, what they're doing to get, stronger in whatever that gap is. And then, of course, we always bring it back to the growth mindset. I always say that's kind of like the 7th pillar of qualifying, but I know it's a little like big picture. So focus on the 6th, but just know, again, you want clients that are growth-minded people who are working actively to better themselves every day, and they will do the work to get the results. That's a big one. What are you doing right now to lay the groundwork of that? So great. If they come back, they're like, oh, I did B school. Amazing. You invest in your business. Like, kudos to you. Again, same thing there, indicator of growth mindset. Learn what they're doing, because there's a real difference in people that are doing the things that will get them to where they need to be and the people that are spinning in circles, and that's not their fault. Sometimes people have no direction and no guidance. We've all been there. Trust me. We have days where we go there every day, right? But you want to figure out like what they've already done so that you can figure out, okay, well, is this person a fit for what I have that I could deliver the solution? And then where do you see the most opportunities for growth? So again, our urgent need, our growth mindset. We talked about really your leads giving you the blueprint on how to close them. This is where you get the language, right? You're going to have people in our industry, like they come back, they're like, I want the visibility. I want to make an impact. I have this mission and I know if I can get it out to the world, it'll blow up, but I need to get there, right? This is the language that we want to hear from people. All right, and a little question here. Oop, one note for you guys. Cynthia just texted me. So if you are in the chat, I will be able to hear it when I go out of my full screen. But make sure you're selecting the blue arrow to respond to panelists and attendees, not just panelists. So I'll see them after we wrap up here, but just a quick note for you guys as well. So a lot of people ask, and again, this session is meant to be very detailed. So again, we are recording this, so have no fear. But we also want this to be a primer to the live launch workshop. So if you're heading into a specific conversion event, such as a live launch or a webinar or a video series, whatever it is you're doing, the way you want to lead people in is talking points. And that's really kind of what I want to give to you in this. What you want to think about is pulling out one key pillar of content from your conversion event and start asking questions to get feedback on the overall topic. Then you're just going to dive into what they're doing to improve, grow, solve, blah, blah, blah. And you open up that conversation. And all you're going to do once you're getting people talking about this thing, again, for us, all roads lead back to online marketing. We have a lot of conversations with people about online marketing already. So what you're going to do is start it, learn about what they're doing, present your conversion event as some type of added resource or tool or something like that for them to add to their arsenal. You never want, when you're talking to people, to be like, oh, I see you're struggling with this thing. Come to my event, right? Like, it sounds funny to say. Your language really impacts people, especially when you're typing in something like an email or a DM. You want it to come off as positive. So you want to invite them to join the conversation. You want to invite them to add this tool into their tool belt, right? It's just another way for them to grow, and you're giving them some tools to get there. You hope that they'll join, you hope they'll get a lot out of it, and you want them to be a part of it. And if you're wondering when the live launch workshop is, after you registered, you will be in for September 9th. We're hosting that in the Tribe of Unstoppable. So if there's anybody who's on this line here who's not in our Facebook group, hop into Facebook, search Tribe of Unstoppables, make sure you're in there because that's where we're hosting. But again, just know this training is meant to be the primer for it. And the way this was actually created was session 2 is all about lead generation. And it's kind of a big one that's hard for us to just put everything into a one session thing. So consider this like your added context and your primer. I'm super excited for you guys to get this. I was excited for this just because I could nerd out about this all day long, but just so you know, that kicks off Monday, September 9th. I want you to screenshot the next slide for another format of this whole social selling funnel. And I apologize, that's a little blurry. I had to take it out of our membership site and blow it up. Again, I hope you appreciate my beautiful art down there in the bottom right of our funnel here. But again, when we talk about kind of warming people up, your top of funnel is where you're just kind of introducing things, right? The middle of your funnel is where you're kind of building further rapport. You're getting into the meat of the conversation, right? This is the time you can start to kind of talk about yourself a little bit more. It's the time where you're going to start to kind of seed in some content, right? And then when you get to kind of this pivot point, that's where you've discovered what this urgent need is, right? That's where you have the opportunity to invite them to a Facebook group, an email list, whatever it is. If you're doing a live launch, to your live launch, yay. And then your bottom of funnel, getting them scheduled for a consultation is the example here. Maybe you want to bat them into your Facebook group or your email list or whatever it is. And so if you're doing the consultation, you will see a little note there about slowing the sale down. We're going to give you guys some bonus resources on closing conversations. If you're into that, we're kind of building out what exactly we want to give you. And we definitely have some Facebook ads stuff coming up next. But I really want to give you guys some sales blueprints as well to kind of remove the stress and the strain from around that. But you'll hear all the good stuff about that. So if you've screenshotted this or taken a picture and you're like, I wonder what they mean by that, to be coming to your inbox. So get excited. Let's bring it all together here. We are wrapping things up. This is kind of the end of our training today. One of the key takeaways that I mentioned earlier that I said we were going to talk about as we kind of brought everything together is that it takes at least 16 impressions to get an action or become established, right? It's the whole idea of being memorable. We talked about how the binge makes you memorable. And we talked about how when you have a 360-degree ecosystem, it's easy to get to 16 impressions. It is the consistency and the frequency of seeing your content, seeing you in their inbox, understanding what you're about, getting connected to you, right? Consistency and frequency. They're in the middle of your ecosystem and all of your stuff, right, is kind of flying around them. Talked about that. Now I want to show you how this plays out in terms of your content and your conversation. Again, my very beautiful artwork. I hope you guys are just like, oh my gosh, she is Van Gogh or something. But this is what it looks like. And again, if you're kind of like, okay, how do I build this out? What does mine look like? Feel free to take a picture of this. As I said, we are recording. This is just one example. And maybe you don't have all of this stuff. That's fine. If you've got somebody on Instagram and Facebook or Instagram and an email list, you've got some good stuff going, right? All we need to make sure is that you're leveraging these things. Again, give them the download in the day. Give them the ability to binge. Let them have the 16 touches, right? So you're going through and you're doing all of these things. But here's the thing. When I gave you guys the example funnel where I was saying, like, we make sure that we're sending people to the Training Tuesdays and the podcast, that's part of this 360-degree ecosystem. So whether you have one thing, two things, two social media platforms, whatever it is, I want you to really audit yourself again and think about the question of would I stick? If I just came to my profile, like, would I stick to this, right? I hope that that makes sense. But this is your ecosystem. And this is, again, the ecosystem is where the content and the conversations happen. You are having conversations to qualify leads and build up your database of great leads. And you're using the things that you're learning from them to turn that back around into your content. So I hope that that makes sense. I'm going to, if I can, exit my full screen here. See if it'll let me. Ooh, we got a thinking wheel. I'm on Safari, which always happens. So if you have questions, keep typing them in the questions box because I'm going to hop over there now after this. I definitely gave you guys a lot of me talking, so I want to make sure that I have a chance to go through and do all of this. Let me go ahead and open these up. Okay, cool. Oh, yay. Okay, so we got all the people saying they can see it. Awesome, awesome. All right, guys, and I'm just scrolling through to make sure that I didn't miss any of your questions. So I'm going to roll through those now. If you have further questions, keep typing. Wendy Sterling asks, can you explain what you mean by units? Yes. So in a Facebook group, you can set your group up in the settings of the group to be a social learning group. I actually learned this from a tribe member a couple months ago. But what you can do is you can set up units, and they're essentially categories. So in the tribe group, there's literally a menu thing that says units. If you click to that, you'll see like business growth, mindset, content, social media, and then you can actually organize all of your stuff into those units. So when people land on that group, like they can go through and they're like, okay, I want content. I want content about content. I want motivation, right? All of these things. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. My shortcoming is not understanding how to use social media optimally and knowing nothing about Instagram. I hear this a lot. People are like, I don't do it because I just don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about any social media when I started. And that's why I really recommend that people get in touch with other, people in their niche or whatever it is, and just find out what exactly it is they're doing. Like, I think on Instagram, for example, storying can be easier than feed posts. But if your audience is like, I never watch stories, focus on feed posts first. Just hone in on where people are hanging out. You'll figure out the rest, as you go. But the important thing is just getting started. And again, you never want people to just land on kind of like a dead social media page because then they won't stick. So you'll always perfect your content. You will never have all the answers as you begin. But find out what it is first on that platform and just ease yourself into that and then keep expanding out from there. Okay, cool. I am going to... We have a couple of people getting the marketing checklist. Amazing. I am noting your names right now. Give me one sec. Perfect. Requesting marketing checklist. Amazing. Thank you, guys. Keep posting if you have it. I'm just noting all of your names so that I can make sure that we send to you. All right, perfect. So maybe we'll email that out actually with our Facebook stuff. This is awesome, you guys. You'll love it. We use this every single day in our business. People ask like, how do you do your content? How do you do X? How do you do Z? And like, for me, I have 2 things printed out every single week. One of them is our PDF on the 6 pillars of qualifying. And the second thing is the marketing checklist, and we use them. All right, let's scroll. Awesome, awesome. Oh, this is awesome. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you for posting your questions because this is very helpful for us to see. We're creating everything in this live launch kind of in real time. So you may have been with us for our July live launch, but know that every time we do this workshop, we do different bonuses, we do different content, we update all of the lead gen to what we're doing right now. So that's awesome. And yeah, you guys can get the slides. I'm recording this, so we'll also send this out. So you guys will have that, and I'll see if I can attach the slides as well. Andre says, I'm still trying to figure out what to offer and what's the one thing I want to sell, as I have several components to my business. So Andre, the way that we teach this, and again, this is just kind of a general answer because we're on a webinar and it's hard to go back and forth here, but what we always typically recommend to people is you want to get on the fastest path to cash. So sometimes what you're going to want to end up doing is actually closing a few one-to-one clients to really work with them and get some ideas on how you can kind of customize this stuff, what the most frequent needs are, and then turn that back around into something evergreen. We have a lot of people who come in, they're like, I'm going to create a course and it's going to be awesome. They create a course and then they have no people to sell it to, or it's not very market validated. A lot of times if you go the one-to-one route, you can at least be monetizing while you build that stuff out. It's a temporary thing. If you're not in love with one-to-one work, obviously you don't have to do anything that you hate. But what I want to kind of keep people from is just like, okay, I'm going to wait 6 months until my website is up and then I'll be in business. And then you end up waiting 9 months because it takes even longer, right? So think about what you can do now to serve people. Your business will always be built in layers. Tana says, what are voice memos on DMs? So on Facebook, on my phone, I have an iPhone, there is a little like microphone option. You can hold it down and talk into your phone. And so it's kind of like you're like talking back and forth with people, which is really cool. But it's nice because they can hear kind of your energy and your voice. And sometimes I think it's easier for people to talk things out than it is to like type out a full essay. Feta said, does this apply to a new coaching business? Absolutely. This is a great way to grow organically. If you're new and you don't want to or can't invest in Facebook ads right now, social selling is going to be your best friend. Danette said, building community is so important to my process, but most of my ladies may be found on LinkedIn. Do they have other places to build community if they don't hang out on Facebook? Yeah, you can be hosting webinars on Zoom. You can do stuff on your business page. You can go YouTube that people show up to. You can get them on your email list. So we talk about Facebook a lot because, again, we're hosting the live launch workshop in our Facebook group, but you should always be pulling people to other places as well. Jamie Starr said to use Facebook chatbots as a strategy. We don't, because our market just doesn't love them. We've tested them multiple times. It doesn't really jive with the way that we do. There's people out there that are using them beautifully and successfully. For us, it's just never been the thing. I think when we talk about business growth, it's like there is a custom element to that. And it's hard to just be like, here's a blanket answer, right? But like I said, there's tons of people that are doing it like amazingly. Okay, Feta said, I'm starting to build a schedule for my coaching business. Should I block 12 hours on my 30-hour schedule to engage with prospects weekly? Feta, I would have to see what your weekly schedule is. Again, I can't coach you on a webinar like this, but if you can DM me a breakdown of your calendar on Facebook, I'm happy to take a look at that. We typically tell people to, break it out so you spend about 10 hours doing client work, and then the rest of the stuff needs to fall into that. But again, that's a totally custom thing per business. Every industry is a little bit different. So if you have a calendar or something, feel free to send that to me. Okay, cool. Thank you. The binge content I have is my YouTube channel. Does this work? It totally works. I think YouTube is kind of a big, I don't want to say safety net, but YouTube is obviously very Google friendly and YouTube is not going anywhere. And I think people, as they get more and more into video content and like IGTV and stuff like that, I imagine YouTube is going to stick around. And honestly, guys, anything with marketing, if you're promoting it and you're promoting it consistently and frequently, you can drive the traffic. Perfect. Okay, cool. On the community, I mean, a place to hang out. Okay, Danette. Together, we can hang on an ongoing basis like a Facebook group. Yeah, Instagram Live, Zoom, just have a Zoom room that maybe you do like a once a week training thing. You can kind of translate that out however you want. What I would do, Danette, is I would actually talk to people in your audience and I would say, what social media platforms are you on? And then find out, like, if they're not on Instagram, do they use Zoom? So our LinkedIn audience, for example, is very different from like our online marketing, social selling savvy, like Facebook and Instagram audience. And so a lot of times for us, like, we wouldn't drive traffic from LinkedIn over to Facebook because it's not a perfect match. But a lot of those people have done like webinars on Zoom and stuff like that. Excuse me. All right, cool. Oops, sorry, my chat got frozen. Okay, cool. Peaches says, is there an example of a weekly schedule identifying how much time goes where? Yeah, in our marketing checklist, Peaches, we have a full breakdown of that. And so what we'll do is I've noted that as well so we can do a future training because that'll be awesome. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I'll give it another minute here if you guys have more questions. A couple things for you guys for next steps. So like I said, we are recording this, so we will go ahead and send out the replay. We'll make sure that we send out the weekly marketing checklist as well. We've also got some Facebook ads resources up our sleeves for you guys as well. Like I said, we're 50-50 people doing social selling and people doing ads. So we'll get all of that out to you. Make sure you're checking your emails for that. And then, of course, our live launch workshop, that kicks off on September 9th. So thank you guys so much for a great training. I will see you over in the Facebook group and we will talk soon. Thanks so much.